the top 5 risks of buying a triple net property and how to mitigate them. In this video, I'm going to share with you the top 5 risks of buying a triple net property and, more importantly, how to mitigate them. Although buying a triple net property offers singular benefits to investors and can be considered a passive and low-risk investment, they are not exempt from major risks that must be identified. And most importantly, determining if those risks can be mitigated in any way. Hi, my name is Alex Casablanca. We are a boutique brokerage firm based in Orlando, Florida, specializing in selling triple net investment properties. We represent buyers, sellers, and 1031 exchange investors in finding and negotiating the best triple net property according to their investment goals and risk tolerance. So now let's get to our top 5 risks of buying a triple net property. Number 1, the risk that the tenant might not renew or close operations before the lease expires. This is the main concern for investors and the number 1 question that I receive from my clients. What happens if the tenant does not renew the lease or close operations before the lease expires? There are several alternatives if that happens. The first alternative is finding another tenant that can occupy the property. However, the key element that we have to consider is that in order to restore the same value to the property, the new tenant must be willing and able to pay the same amount of rent than the other tenant was paying. In other words, to restore the same value, we must restore the same annual income. Does that make sense? I'm going to give you a real example of that particular situation. Walgreens and CVS have closed hundreds of stores throughout the United States, and some of those properties have been either released or subleased to dollar stores, most of them specifically to Dollar Tree. Although a new tenant was found in this case, the reality is that Dollar Tree cannot pay the same amount of rent that Walgreens was paying. Therefore, the previous value of the property cannot be restored in that particular case. Being more specific, if Walgreens was paying $300,000 per year in rent at a cap rate of 5%, the value of that Walgreens was about $6 million. However, if Dollar Tree can only pay $150,000 per year, using the same 5 cap rate as an assumption, the value of the property would be only $3 million. In this case, the only way to have restored the full $6 million value of that Walgreens was by finding another tenant that could pay the same $300,000 per year in rent that Walgreens was paying. The question now is how to mitigate the risk of the possibility that the tenant does not renew the lease or decides to leave earlier. That's when the real estate fundamentals comes into play. Before buying any particular triple net property, you have to make sure that it is located in a strong prime location with strong demographics, high population, high average daily traffic, and preferably in an area that is in an expansion. If the property is in a strategic location with strong real estate fundamentals, that will increase the tenant's probability of success in that location. Therefore, they will want to stay there for the long term. In addition, if you might need to bring another tenant, the probability of replacing the original rent is certainly higher. Another aspect to take a look is the presence of major anchor tenants in the surrounding area. That is also evidence of strong real estate fundamentals. When there's a Walmart Supercenter, Target, or Home Depot in the surroundings, you can rest assured that those big companies have done an extensive research of that particular location. Very important. You certainly cannot control or mitigate completely the possibility that the tenant might not renew the lease or close operations early. But you do have control of making sure that the property that you are buying has strong real estate fundamentals that will allow you to mitigate that risk substantially. Number two, the risk that the existing tenant might decide to assign or sublease the property in case that they decide to close operations early. All triple net leases include a clause called assignment and subletting. That clause contains the circumstances in which the tenant can assign or sublease the property without the consent of the owner. Most corporate leases from strong national tenants such as Walgreens, CVS, McDonald's, among others, will state that in case that the tenant might decide to assign the lease, they will still be responsible to continue paying the rent until the lease expires. There are other leases that establish a minimum amount of locations or net worth equal or similar to the existing tenant. We mitigate that risk by making sure that the assignment and subletting clause would leave you in an equal or very similar position that you were before with your original tenant. Ideally, the existing tenant should remain responsible or the assignee should have a similar strength, number of locations, and net worth of the existing tenant. It is very important to review carefully the lease agreement and the terms and conditions of the assignment and subletting clause. It is very important to have a knowledgeable and experienced real estate attorney that can assist you reviewing those clauses in the lease so you can make a well-informed decision. Number three, new technologies that can take over traditional business and can cause changes in consumer spending and behavior that ultimately impact the possibility of success of your tenant. Technology has created meaningful and drastic changes to the consumer spending and behavior. Nowadays, we can buy pretty much anything in Amazon. Banks, as an example, have been reducing their number of branches significantly because people have switched to online banking. Pharmacies no longer need those big locations because people now can buy their prescriptions online or in their local grocery store. The best way to mitigate that risk is by investing in a property in which the tenant provides an essential and irreplaceable product or service to the consumer. Essential services such as food, gas, groceries, healthcare, among many others. Those are the things that you cannot buy in Amazon, neither now nor probably in the foreseeable future. Number four, major economic crises and disruptions that can affect your tenant's ability to pay rent. The most recent example of a major economic crisis was COVID-19. COVID-19 caused a sudden economic impact to many businesses and employees. During those days, some tenants could not afford to continue making their rent payments because they were not generating enough sales. The best way to mitigate that risk is by buying a property in which the tenant provides an essential product or service to the consumer. During those COVID days, fast foods, pharmacies, gas stations, convenience stores, dollar stores, healthcare facilities, among others, continued operating as essential service, and most of them continued making the monthly rent payments without disruption. Number five, the risk that the tenant might go bankrupt and will be forced to close operations and stop paying the rent. A recent example of that situation is Red Lobsters. Red Lobsters, although a well-known brand name and beloved by the majority of their customers, they were heavily indebted and they didn't have any other choice but to go bankrupt. As a result, they were forced to close a significant numbers of their locations. Certainly, this is a risk that it is totally out of your control and sometimes out of the control of the tenants as well. As I explained before, a strong tenant now with a strong business concept now might not be in existence 10 years from now. But what you can do to mitigate that risk in some sort of way. First, do an extensive research on the tenants and brand name performance. If it is a corporate lease from a publicly traded company, such as Walgreens, Chipotle, Dollar General, among others, there is extensive public information about the financial stability of those companies. If it is a private franchisee, it's a little bit tricky because those are private companies that the information that they provide cannot be verified. But you can still inquire about how many locations they have, look for recent news on the company, and even visiting the property to see how they maintain the location. Two key concepts here that we already discussed before have the absolute most importance in mitigating that risk. First, you must buy a property with strong real estate fundamentals, strong locations, strong demographics, and in an area that is in an expansion. If the tenant leaves, the possibilities that you can bring another tenant and restore the full value of the property are definitely higher. Second, make sure that you buy a property in which the tenant provides an essential and irreplaceable product or service to the consumer. Also, it is very important to analyze the new market trends. New technologies such as electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, among many others, will have an impact in many businesses 5 or 10 years from now. But no matter the advances in technology, we as humans will always need our primary necessities. And what are those necessities? Well, we need food, either from the grocery store or from restaurants. We also need medical care. We also need housing. We also need transportation. We need entertainment as well, among many others. So those are the things that we cannot buy in Amazon. Not now, probably not in the foreseeable future. So focus your search in properties and tenants that provide an essential and irreplaceable product or service to the consumer. That's the key. Certainly, there are additional risks to consider beyond the major ones that we have mentioned in this video. Every property and every market presents a different risk profile. A tenant or brand name that is doing good business now might not be in existence 10 years from now. Two key concepts are very important in mitigating the risk that we have just discussed. First, make sure that you buy a property with strong real estate fundamentals in a prime and strategic location with strong demographics and preferably in an area that is in an expansion. Second, make sure that you buy a property in which the tenant provides an essential and irreplaceable product or service to the consumer. In summary, the top 5 risks of buying a triple net property are: number 1, the risk that the tenant might not renew the lease or close operations early. Number 2, the risk that the tenant might decide to assign or sublease the property if they might decide to close operations early. Number 3, new technologies that can take over traditional businesses and can cause major changes in consumer spending and behavior. Number 4, major economic crisis and disruptive events. Number 5, the risk that the tenant might go bankrupt and will be forced to close operations and stop paying the rent. As your buyer's broker, I will always tell you all the risks involved in a particular property acquisition so you can make a well-informed decision. We specialize in representing triple net buyers and 1031 exchange investors. We have the knowledge and expertise and market connections to guide you along the way. From market research, identifying potential properties, submitting offers and negotiating them, due diligence, up to the closing table. we have helped many triple net buyers and 1031 exchange investors in finding and negotiating the best triple net property according to their investment goals and risk tolerance. Moreover, we represent our buyers for free since we get paid from the seller. And we also pay for our buyers' closing costs up to a maximum of $10,000. This incentive will offset or cover completely the major buyer's closing cost expenses, such as title fees, attorney's fees, recording fees, among others. We are the brokers that give you more in exchange of your trust. If you have any questions about what we have just discussed in this video, feel free to contact me directly. My number is 407-205-7570. Or you can also send me an email at alex@casablancacre.com. I hope that after watching this video, now you have a better understanding of what are the major risks involved in buying a triple net property. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'm looking forward to being your broker in your next property acquisition.